Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I first of all thank you for calling me, and I had spoken to you beforehand and I've spoken to others as well, and I wish to put on record very clearly my concerns, opposition even, in relation to what we have before us. As I said to the Shadow Minister before we started as well, and the Secretary of State will not be surprised when he hears this. It is heartwarming to see the level of interest of the mainland MPs on this issue for Northern Ireland education. And yet when I raised this issue of funding for preschool education, I didn't receive the same interest in the Chamber. So it's really good to see members taking the time to come along and have an interest in education, when quite clearly in the past it's been one of the things that they weren't really interested in. I expect I'll see the present members at other Northern Ireland debates and look forward to their renewed support when it comes to fixing the framework and getting back to the United Kingdom at all times, not just when expedient to push an agenda. Madam Chair, I rise to highlight multiple concerns with this RSE regulation and the speed of such regulations and the disregard that there are for people in Northern Ireland, those that I represent, those who have come to me, the church groups, the education authorities, the headmasters and the teachers. The Secretary of State is aware of the concerns of the DUP and by individual constituents who have raised issues from the Northern Ireland office, of which there are numerous from across this whole part of Northern Ireland, and indeed I've had various letters from numerous people outlining these issues very, very clearly. I have multiple questions, Madam Chair. I'm sure we'll try and get it done if I can before the votes at 7 o'clock, but if not, it's very important that we have on record our concerns for these things. The first is to grasp an understanding of the reason that the Minister is seeking to railroad this issue through with no consultation and inappropriate information. I've read the standard response to enable schools to factor in a programme for the new deadline, a deadline which the Minister imposed on himself, and yet when schools have asked how they're supposed to operate and run a school on the slash budget and afford staff, pay rises and the increase of utilities, the Secretary of State does not seem in such a rush to enable them to know how they will run their statutorily obliged learning schemes with a severely underfunded budget. Interest in some things, no interest in other things. The really important core issues. If the Minister would give a frank and open answer as to the real purpose behind this steamrolling, it would be certainly useful for moving forward. Schools have expressed concern to me, and I know to my other colleagues who will speak as well as members of this committee and those who are witnesses. The schools have expressed concern to me of the fact that they are statutorily obliged to have an RSE policy, which is subject to consultation with parents. This cannot possibly take place, and so we're left yet again with a scenario in which the parents in Northern Ireland, my constituents in Strangford and across the whole of Northern Ireland, are not given the same consultation facility as those in the Minister's own constituency, indeed, and right on the member for Daventry. The question is clear: why are parents in Strangford unable to consult with how their children are taught sensitive issues? Not saying they shouldn't be taught. These are sensitive issues, and the parents want an input into that process, the teachers want an input in that process, and the churches want an input into that process. And yet the constituents of the right honourable members of Daventry were allowed to sow into their children's education. Yet again, the Secretary of State has enforced on a majority his will over their rights. That's how I see it, that's how my constituents see it, and that's how other constituents from other parts of Northern Ireland see it again. One would wonder how constituents in other areas would feel to see this done on an issue which so many care so desperately about: their children and protection of their innocence and their childhood. As a grandfather of 6 grandchildren, 2 of them at school, some at nursery school and some about to attend, I'm very aware from a personal point of view exactly what it means, but I'm also very aware, Madam Chair, the impact upon all those children across Northern Ireland. When we come to the ability of parents to withdraw their child from such lessons, the wording is so vague, it would be laughable were it not for the education of my granddaughters I referred to, and other children as well. The Department must formulate their own withdrawal policy, but this does not need to be in place at the time of the new regulation being enforced. So again, it doesn't give the protection which the Secretary of State referred to, and we would dispute. However, a clear lesson on the nanny state's policy in raising children and the value placed in the autonomous nature of a family unit, the government has shown its hand today. Gone is the right of the parent, and in this place is government's job to educate morally as well as academically, ignoring parents, ignoring teachers, ignoring schools, and ignoring the input of the churches as well. That's what these regulations do, and the question is, where will it end, and why has it been rolled out and enforced so quickly? There is a reason that the standard 21-day convention between laying an instrument and bringing it into effect was not followed. This is certainly a question which this House must ask at large, regardless of opinion or lack of opinion sometimes on this subject. Why has the protocol of this House been set aside in this case, and what has made it so urgent? I have outlined that schools cannot implement this change without consultation, so what can be the point? The Minister imposed a deadline. The Minister can change the deadline. To me, it's very, very simple, Madam Chair. And certainly when he comes back to us at the end, it'll be very, very interesting to see what his reply will be to my comments and the comments of my right honourable friend, the member for East Antrim and the member for North Antrim as well. The cynic in me, and it's not just the age, Madam Chair, as we get older, and sometimes we do become cynical, but I think you become cynical sometimes with life. Many of my constituents are equally cynical. They've contacted me in droves, and I mean that, be under no illusion about the depth of opposition that there is to this, from right across my constituency, from all religious persuasions, from all political parties. Would say, and my constituents tell me in Shangford, that this is just another tool to beat the DUP into submission. The slashing of the budget was not enough to pressurise us into sacrificing the integrity of Northern Ireland and our future, and perhaps the imposition of yet another socially grey area may force them into this. I hope that this is not the case, but nothing I've heard so far from the Secretary of State has convinced me, and certainly not my constituents, who I would say respectively, Madam Chair, have lost all faith in a Secretary of State who seems so removed from the needs of the area under his responsibility and more focused on politically forcing movement, in other words, political machinations at work. The fact is, in this and for this House to consider, is why the imposition of the abortion regime, the most relaxed in all of Europe, which is in turn seeing a press for the relaxation of the abortion on demand until birth throughout the United Kingdom, right here. Always said it was going that way, and that realisation is coming forward with a zest, with a scant debate which allowed zero debate on the part of the regime. Government has been allowed to pass legislation of importance with unacceptable scrutiny, and those who press for it now will have to accept it when the shoe is on the other foot. I think back, Madam Chair, to the outcry when government made the decision to, rightly in my opinion, overturn Scottish Parliament decisions recently on gender recognition. My colleagues were up in arms about the circumnavigation of devolution, and yet had not been silent and complicit when this was carried out by the Secretary of State on the matter of Northern Ireland a number of months previously. Double standards, forked tongues, two opinions about the same thing. The silence of this House on holding the government accountable to process set a precedent, and yet again on this issue will ultimately affect how this government views and treats devolution. Make no. I'm happy to give way to an old friend.
I'm following what he's saying with great interest, and I understand his anger. But I know he won't agree with me. But it follows logically then that if the honourable gentleman and his colleagues want to have a greater say in what is going on in Northern Ireland, because he's criticising the Secretary of State for taking this action, surely the answer is simple. Return to Stormont.
It's even more simple. It's get the protocol right, get the Stormont deal right, and make it acceptable to unionists. For far too long, Madam Chair, what has happened is that the Conservative Party have pursued a policy which, and now you put the subject up, have pursued a policy which ignores the viewpoints of unionists. And I know the honourable gentleman is a unionist and he understands our point of view. It certainly would be my opinion in this House that he does. But I really can't understand why we haven't got a process that we're part of, and the Stormont break doesn't deliver that. It doesn't deliver the legislation and legal importance that we want to see in place. So where does it lie? It lies with the Secretary of State. It lies with government here. And let's be quite clear. The first thing that we wish to see, Madam Chair, is to see an assembly that is back to normal and is working, and that would be our wish to see that happen. Most members do not get involved in the Northern Ireland question, although the Honourable Gentleman quite clearly has. Is being used as a baseboard for UK legislation there, and the processes you turn a blind eye to for Northern Ireland can and will be used by successive governments as a precedent. I say that again because it's important that I say it, because I feel it sets the precedent. Precedent has been set before, it's set once again. Madam Chair, my constituents remain unimpressed, and I say this seriously, in a Secretary of State who, as one constituent said to me, seeks to sow discord and crash our society in Northern Ireland. Now, some of the backbenchers, right honourable members, may not wish to hear this, but it's going to be said, and it'll be said in this committee today. Whether you like to hear it or whether you don't, and that's the point we're going to make here. So I hope that you'll take some listening to our comments for once when we have this delegated legislative committee to do just that. I remain unimpressed, Madam Chair, by a government that won't take decisions on funding for education in Northern Ireland and yet will dictate that access to abortion must be taught this incoming year without thought to parental choice or the basic right to practice your faith. And that's what the churches are telling me. Now, honourable members may not like to hear what the churches are telling me, but I'm going to tell you what they're saying, that this is a step in the wrong direction, and they want to be consulted in this process, and it hasn't happened. So that, again, is that opinion. Those are personal issues which may be of little import to this House, and yet this House should be unimpressed that their government has carried out a number of unscrutinised legislative works without pushback from those in every party whose job it is to scrutinise legislation and hold government to account. The committee, and by extension, Madam Chair, this House should be holding government accountable as to why they cannot give an answer to these questions. And I have three questions they asked them, the Secretary of State. In the terms of the SI protocols, why the 21-day convention was breached, and what is the precedent set here which will allow government to override procedure at whim, because that's what it does, and we have to express real concern. And secondly, why this instrument does not place a duty on the Department of Education to have regulations in place to facilitate parents withdrawing their children from sexuality education by the implementation date of the policy, and what steps the Northern Ireland Office has taken to ensure the Department of Education does have, in fact, such regulations in place. My constituents want the right to not be involved and to withdraw their children, and I'm not convinced by what the Secretary of State says so far that will be. And thirdly, why this House is passing legislation without the basic steps in place, again ignoring the viewpoint of elected representatives and the people of Northern Ireland from all political parties. The age-old argument of slippery slope cannot be overstated in this case. The government is using this as a stick, again to say, to beat the DUP into submission. The problem is it's not the DUP taking this beating. It's the people of the province that we represent, and all those political parties, and the churches, and the parents, and the teachers, and the future of our nation that has been beaten into submission by a government who refuses to acknowledge the legitimate concerns of legislation affecting children receiving adequate passage through the legislative journey. Informing the people, if you had the assembly up and running, then this wouldn't need to come through this method, when the fact is that there's not a need, even in the current circumstances, for the disregard of protocol and procedure is inaccurate, and again needs to be and should be challenged. The procedures followed for this piece of legislation are unacceptable. The job of this committee in the House is to call for explanation, and that's what this DL committee should be doing, and to hold them to account. And I'm asking members present, regardless of opinion on the issue itself, to join me in doing so, and we will divide the House and divide this committee on this whenever it comes to the bit, and we feel it's important. This is not a proper mechanism for bringing forward such monumental change, and the Secretary of State cannot get away with pushing the boundaries in Northern Ireland as a precursor. Northern Ireland remains a part of the United Kingdom. We should benefit from the appropriate mechanism as democracy in Strangford, in the same way your constituents do in Darnley, in Hove, Banff and Buchan, or Swindon. This legislation is not right. It is opposed by schools and parents and churches of all denominations alike, and they have a right to express that, just not to the minister or government, it would seem. Madam Chair, on behalf of my constituents in Strangford, on behalf of the teachers who have contacted me, on behalf of the parents who have written to me in droves with emails, letters, contacts and phone calls, and on behalf of the good people who have expressed real concern, I wish to register my opposition to what's coming forward today. I express real concern that, again, Madam Chair, with respect, government and the Secretary of State are pushing a policy that they know is abhorrent and to many people in Northern Ireland and who oppose it. And what a disappointment it is to once again to be proven that the Secretary of State doesn't really care about the people of Northern Ireland. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and what does he do? He works against the people of Northern Ireland, and that's a fact. Thank you.